All right, I think we could go ahead and get started. All right, so hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this session, which is Upgrade and Thrive, Elevate Your Productivity by Unleashing New Possibilities in the ABL. My name is Raphael Ross. I'm a Senior Product Manager on the OpenEdge Product Management team. I've been with Progress for about 2 years, and this is my very first PUG challenge, so I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to get the session going with you today. So let's go ahead and jump right into the agenda. So on the agenda, I want to begin the discussion by first covering why upgrade to 12.8. And then you can see we have a long list of topics to cover. We have 8 key features that have been introduced since the last LTS release, which is 12.2, until the latest LTS release, which is 12.8. So if you have any questions, by all means, go ahead and jot them down, and we should have 5 or 10 minutes or so at the end of the session to answer any of your questions. So jumping right into it, this is a question that you or your organizations may have, which is why? Why upgrade to OpenEdge 12.8? You saw in the keynote that if you're on 11.7, we're retiring 11.7 in April, on April 1st of next year, so your time is limited. But if you're on 12 and have, let's say, developed an application on 12.2, for example, and that application is performing well, the application is stable, the application users are stable, they're fine. Why should you upgrade to 12.8? Well, we've introduced a tremendous amount of new functionality, a tremendous amount of new enhancements and new capabilities since 12.2. And in total, we've introduced 214 new features since the 12.2 release. And 88 of these are ABL related. So a tremendous amount of new capabilities, and these new capabilities came from your ideas, your feedback, your technical requirements, your business needs, and so that's why implementing upgrading to 12.8 will benefit you, because you can take advantage of these new capabilities in order to drive new innovation, drive new business, and drive new revenue, I'm hoping. All right, so like I mentioned, 88 ABL new features have been released since 12.2 until 12.8. The VAR statement was introduced in OpenEdge 12.3, and subsequent releases introduced VAR enhancements. And so specifically for OpenEdge 12.3, you can see the 3 lines of code. You can see the first lines of code are a declaration of an array, 3-element array, before the VAR statement was introduced, in comparison to the second, or the line underneath the arrow, which is after, defining an array of 3 elements after the VAR statement was introduced. And you can see by this that the VAR statement alone just introduces a more concise, more compact way of defining variables. It's shorthand notation for the defined variable statement, so no longer do you need to add in, right, defined variable. You get it with just adding VAR. With VAR, you also get the no undo behavior. As you know, the undo behavior comes with overhead. It slows your application. So with VAR, you get the no undo behavior. You're able to define multiple variables in a single statement, which is good. You've seen that in an example above that arrays could be defined using the bracket notation, which most of you are familiar with. And then you can assign initial values to variables using just the equal sign without any other keywords. And so let's see some very basic examples of the VAR statement in use. I mentioned defining multiple variables in a single statement. Obviously, we're defining S1, S2, and S3 as character types. Second example, another basic example, again, you saw defining arrays. This is just yet another example defining arrays, again, without the extend keyword, just using bracket notation instead. You can define indeterminate arrays or determinate arrays. You can see from the example, S4 is a determinate array with 10 elements, whereas S5 is an indeterminate array with the empty brackets. And then again, you can assign initial values without using the initial keyword, just by using the equal sign instead. So my character string is being assigned to S6. So pretty straightforward examples. That was 12.3. In 12.4, we further enhanced the VAR statement by allowing you to instantiate objects in a single statement. So you can see the instantiation of my object. It also allows you to instantiate and initialize arrays of determinate or indeterminate object variables. You can see the examples here. The first example obviously being in a determinate array, where the second example, again, being an indeterminate array, or indeterminate array, yeah. Then lastly, you can use expressions to assign values. So in this simple example, we're showing a built-in datetime function. You can use custom functions, you can use methods or different expressions, again, to initialize a variable. So that was 12.4, 12.3, and 12.4. That's the VAR statement. So what's the benefit? Bottom line, key benefits is that the VAR statement simplifies your code by combining multiple operations into a single statement. Next, in OpenEdge 12.4, we also introduced the aggregate statement. And the aggregate statement, it's superior than what was used before, which was the accumulate and accum functions for performing aggregate operations. And so you can see here, just by the bullets, that before you needed to use the accumulate statement and accumulate function in order to perform an aggregate operation on the client side. Whereas now, you can perform an aggregate operation just by using the aggregate statements. So two statements were used before, turned into one statement. That's already, that already provides efficiency there. Because the computation is done on the database side, now the computation is faster, it's more efficient. So you get a performance increase by the aggregate operation being performed on the database side versus the client side. Most of you know, with the aggregate statement, you could only use it to perform the count, total, and average aggregate operations in ABL. And there's some quick syntax for the aggregate operation, using the aggregate keyword, followed by the aggregate target variable. The aggregate operation itself, either count, total, or average aggregate operations on the field that it's aggregating on a table that it's aggregating on, and then the optional where clause as well. And so let's see some quick examples using the aggregate statement. So really basic example, counting the number of records in the customer table. So again, just assigning it to a number of customers, a count aggregate operation on the customer number field, and on the customer table itself. Second example, more of the same, except this time we're counting the number of customers in Boston. So we're satisfying a where clause where the country equals USA and the city equals Boston. And just a quick note that the count also includes unknown values in your count. All right, more examples of using the aggregate statement. This example is calculating the average balance of customers in Chicago. Again, similar to the first example, using a where clause, but it's instead of doing a count, it's doing an average on the balance field on the customer table, and it's satisfying the where clause. You had another example similar to the previous examples. This time it's using the total aggregate operation instead of the average or the count. So pretty simple examples. So what's the benefit to developers? Well, the aggregate statement simplifies your code and it provides significant improvements over the previous way that we used to do it by using, again, the accumulate and accum functions. So I said that it improved the performance. Well, it does. We measured this. The team ran some performance testing on a non-index table with 100,000 rows. And you can see the breakdown. So again, comparing the accumulate and accum functions with the aggregate statement, two statements against one statement. and then the aggregate operations count, average, and total. You can see the values are in milliseconds, and then you can see the huge performance increase using the aggregate statement over using the other two statements. All right, moving right along to the next feature that we want to cover, which is the .NET support. So .NET support was introduced also in OpenEdge 12.4. It supports specifically it added support specifically for OpenEdge Open Client Toolkit. So essentially, with this feature, you can run open client applications on any platform that supports .NET 2.0 libraries. You can see the current LTSs that Microsoft supports. So these include these releases: .NET Framework 4.8, .NET 6, and .NET 8 as well. And then you can also, if you're running on Windows, it supports both .NET Framework 4.8 and .NET as well. If you're running on Linux, it only supports .NET 8. And just a quick footnote there, that if you're running on Linux, that it doesn't support GUI functionality like WinForms. All right, so fast forward from 12.4 to OpenEdge 12.7. Around this time was when Microsoft, I believe, stopped introducing new features for the .NET Framework 4.8. And so, in product management, we said that customers that developed their applications on .NET Framework, they needed a way forward to modernize their applications if they incorporated any .NET Framework elements, libraries, controls, and whatnot. And so OpenEdge 12.7, we introduced support for .NET 6 on Windows, and in OpenEdge 12.8, we introduced support for .NET 6 on Linux. And so some key benefits that this provides developers is that you can now use like newer libraries, newer .NET 6 libraries, newer .NET 6, .NET-based controls to improve the user interface. This was the first time that you were able to now access .NET classes from the ABL in multiple clients, ABL clients. You also got support for PDSOE, content assist, content class browser, etc. You also, with the .NET 6 support, we also saw a performance increase. And so we measured, it was about 20%, we saw a 20% performance increase over .NET Framework when we tested. Your mileage may vary based on your application. And then lastly, you can renew your applications, right, in terms of support, in terms of security, in terms of look and feel, without a disruptive re-architecture or redesign on your application, because we're supporting it built into the ABL. All right, so most of you know that OpenEdge doesn't ship with the .NET installer. So in order to use .NET with OpenEdge, you have to first download the installer. You have to then install the .NET runtime, specifically either using .NET Desktop, that .NET Desktop runtime, which comes with the .NET base runtime, or specifically .NET SDK. Because OpenEdge supports .NET on both the 64-bit and 32-bit, you have to download the right installer based on your OpenEdge installation, so 64-bit or 32-bit. So once you've downloaded the installer, once you've installed the installer, now you need to load the installer using the starter parameter CLR net core. And then you have to, if you've implemented if you used any .NET Framework libraries in your previous applications or your existing applications and want to transition to .NET, you have to replace your .NET Framework libraries with .NET compatible libraries. And then lastly, recompile your code and you're off to the races. All right, so that was 12.4 and 12.4, I believe. 12.4, I believe, yes. We introduced also safe navigation operator along with other features that I'll introduce later on. So safe navigation operator, this is nothing more than the question mark and colon symbol. And so what this does is that it allows for conditional execution of of a chain of OpenEdge, object-oriented ABL code. And we'll see examples of it in the next slide. It eliminates the need for conditional code. So if you want to examine or if you want to catch a null occurrence within your cascading, OOABL code, you have to add in conditional code in order to do that. And again, I'll show you an example in the next slide. So what this also does is it allows you to write, because you're eliminating the conditional code like if then else blocks, it allows you to write more concise, more, again, compact object-oriented code. And there's a quick reference to the syntax. You have your object reference. Squeezed in the middle is a safe navigation operator, aka the Elvis operator. And then on the right-hand side, you have your either class member name or class method. So this is an expression without the safe navigation operator. And you can see that if a null occurs anywhere within the methods 1, 2, or 3, the AVM is going to throw an error. And so if you want to catch a null occurrence in any of the methods 1, 2, or 3, you have to write conditional code to if-then-else statements to catch any null occurrence in methods 1, 2, and 3. The better way, the more efficient way of doing it is by using the safe navigation operator. And you can see the subtle differences in the two statements. We're just simply adding the safe navigation operator, the question mark, preceding the colon in this case. So what this does is it essentially terminates the expression if an error occurs anywhere in the methods, and it returns the unknown value. And so for developers, the key benefit, again, it eliminates the need for conditional code, and it replaces it with more compact code, which is the safe navigation operator itself. All right, so OOABL Collections. With OOABL Collections, I'm assuming there's many developers in the audience, you know that a collection is nothing more than a group of objects with similar characteristics. And so specifically with OOABL Collections in OpenEdge 12.5, we introduced built-in list collections in the OOABL. In 12.6, we introduced sorted set collections, and in 12.7, we introduced hash map collections. And so this is the definition of all of them. Quick definition, but I'll go through every single one of them and their definitions. So again, we introduced, so we used to have OpenEdge core collections package. It was a limited implementation of collections. But with, again, in OpenEdge 12.5, we introduced a built-in construct collection into the OOABL, specifically list collection in this case, that maintains a set of elements, i.e. objects, in a sequential order. So characteristics or features of the list collection, well, it preserves the order as they were inserted into the list collections, unlike sorted set collections, which we'll see in the next slide. It allows duplicate elements, so it allows duplicate objects to be entered into the list collection. Supports a type-safe generic programming model with the syntax generic type reference of the T enclosed in angular brackets there. And then it supports 6 built-in classes and interfaces with their own properties and methods. So in this case, the breakdown is 4 interfaces and 2 classes specifically for the built-in list collection in the OOABL. So just a quick and basic sort of coding example of creating list collections, managing list collections. You can see the variable declarations on the first 3 lines. The first block of code is what I'm going to call it. You can see the implementation of progress.collections.list and progress.collections.iiterator. We're assuming we have a president class that we're going to use. Second line, we are creating a new empty list of president objects. With the second line, the third block is adding 3 elements to the list using the list's add method. And we're specifically adding the objects, the president objects, George, John, and Thomas, the first 3 presidents of the United States. The fourth block, we are retrieving the first element from the list using the get method, passing the index of 1, using the get method for that class. Sorry. The next line, we're replacing the first element in the list with a fully named president. So again, just using the list's set method, passing in an index of 1, and then replacing the object's name with George Washington. And then next line, we're removing the second president from the list using the remove at method. Next line, we are simply printing out the number of presidents in the list, so president objects in the list, using just a count keyword there, and then iterating through the entries of the list. So you can see by OpenEdge providing a built-in construct, specifically a list collection, you're able to create, manage, manipulate the list fairly simply. All right, after 12.5, that was 12.5. After 12.6, we added support for sorted set collection, built-in sorted set collection. So by definition, a sorted set collection maintains a unique set of elements or objects in a specific order. Unlike the list collections, the order is the order of elements is maintained, not specifically how they were inserted. Sorted set collections do not allow for duplicate elements, i.e. objects. Again, it supports a type-safe generic programming model, and it supports 5 built-in classes and interfaces, again, with their own dedicated properties and methods as well. I'm not going to go and show you an example just because of time, but you can load a code example in ABL Dojo. I'll discuss ABL Dojo in one of the last slides of this session. All right, fast forwarding, that was OpenEdge 12.5, 12.6, and this is 12.7. We introduced yet another built-in construct called hash map collections, collection of key value pairs, also referred to as a map, that's backed by a hash table, hence the name, hash map. Hash map, by definition, it contains unique keys where each key is associated with a value. Those values cannot be duplicated, but the keys, and also the keys have to be unique. Just like the other collection constructs in OOABL, it supports 8 built-in classes and interfaces with their own properties and methods as well, and you can see the breakdown of interfaces and classes there. So what's the bottom line, and what's the key benefit for ABL developers? Well, the list collection, the sorted set collection, the hash map collection, all these built-in OOABL collections significantly improves the performance of using the previous limited implementation of OpenEdge core, OpenEdge.core.collections package. All right, moving on. So we have in 12.5 introduced an integration between OpenEdge and Apache Kafka. And this is really exciting because most of us know that enterprises use, consists of many business applications that need to interact with each other. They need to respond to each other's events, and this has to happen in real time or near real time. And so many of us already had used Kafka in the past or incorporate Kafka in some way into their organization and process messages this way. And so Kafka, in many regards, is the industry standard in terms of event streaming because it's extremely fast, extremely scalable in processing real-time messages and events. Kafka is extremely popular as well. It's 80% of Fortune 100 companies trust and use Kafka. This is right on their website. So it's trusted by organizations, large organizations, small organizations, again, in sending and receiving messages and processing of messages as well. What's the key benefit for OpenEdge developers? You can leverage now event-driven architectures directly from within the ABL, which is huge. All right, so event streaming with Kafka. So how does it work? Well, if you have a mobile application, if you have an ERP system, if you have an IoT sensor, if you have a database on-prem, all these devices, all these systems, collect data, and that data changes. When that data changes, it creates an event. And in many cases, those events need to be consumed by a consumer of those events or those devices and systems. And so with event streaming with Kafka, you can essentially use the OpenEdge messaging API in order to connect to a Kafka cluster, send messages directly to a Kafka broker as a Kafka producer. The second half of the equation is that those messages, again, need to be consumed a lot of times by other disparate business applications. And so now you have this producer to consumer environment, I would just call it that, that can take place. Now you can utilize the OpenEdge messaging API to not only send messages, to not only connect to a Kafka cluster and send messages, but also receive messages directly from your ABL applications. So in a lot of respect, this connects you to the outside world like nothing else that we've introduced in the past. All right, so that was OpenEdge 12.5. In OpenEdge 12.6, we further enhanced the integration between OpenEdge and Apache Kafka by introducing the ability to send and receive messages asynchronously, so multiple messages at a time and asynchronously. So this significantly improved the Kafka producer's throughput of how many messages can be sent and received. And from our testing in 12.5, we were able to send, again, your mileage may vary, but we were able to send 100 messages per second, whereas in 12.6, after this enhancement, we were able to send 1,000 messages per second, so pretty quick. And then you can also, in 12.6, with this additional enhancement, it allows you to configure, add more configurations to the producer and the consumer. So if you want to do more than just send messages out into space, if you want to, for example, have a read receipt of that messages, know when that message was completed, this feature allows you to do that, the Kafka transactional producer. And you could do many other things with Kafka. These were just some of the basic, at the top were some of the basic use cases that we heard. Hey, we need to write streams of events, read streams of events, process streams of events, and store streams of events. These were below that are the specific use cases that we heard from our customers. Activity tracking, we need to track number of clicks, number of likes, number of orders, registrations. Log aggregation, we need to stream data into one centralized location and then process that data. Data processing, low latency. I think this is the original use case that LinkedIn used for I think low latency ingestion of messages, I think is what it was. But essentially, if you're a financial institution, a bank of some sort, you produce monthly, quarterly reports, annual reports, a bunch of data all at the same time, and you need to push that information out to your consumers. There's just another use case where you can use Kafka. Messaging, Kafka can also be used to replace message brokers like ActiveMQ or RabbitMQ. All right, next feature is protect compiled R code or application code. So in OpenEdge 12.7, we introduced the ability to, we introduced a new package to allow you to protect your compiled application code by allowing it to be signed. And so this protected your code, your R code from corruption or malicious threats. So now you have the ability with this new package, with this, i.e. a library, to sign and verify your application code. All right, some features of this. I mentioned, it's a new package. Specifically, it's an archive file with the .api extension. It's based on a Java jar standard, and then it also includes a manifest file that describes the archive file. It's just like a PL file. It's just like a procedure library file, but it includes better security. And that, again, you can verify signed archive files. It also includes new utilities where a system administrator can create a new archive file with the ProPack utility and also sign an archive file with the ProSign utility. And then the built-in class, OpenEdge introduced this new built-in class called progress.archive.archiveinfo, and that just provides information of the manifest file for a given archive file. All right, so in OpenEdge 12.8, we introduced dynamic data masking that we also call DDM. So our customers, our architects worked with several customers that wanted to find a solution to meet regulations. And to meet regulations specifically by protecting sensitive information like credit card information, social security cards, phone numbers, date of births, health information, you name it, from unauthorized users. And so the technical requirements that our architects were given were that we need to protect the sensitive information. We don't want to change our code. We don't want the underlying data to be changed. We want it to be configuration-based. We want it to be able to turn off the solution, turn on the solution, apply different types of configuration on top of. We don't want it to be a one-size-fits-all solution. We want it to be configuration-based. And of course, like any other solution, we want it to be highly performant and highly available. The trick is that, well, there are users of the sense. There are users like human resources managers, like administrators, that need to have access to this data. They need to be able to see this data. But of course, there are users like contractors, like summer interns, that don't need to have access to this information. And so the solution that they ultimately decided was dynamic data masking, and I'll get into what dynamic data masking is. So essentially, it helps in masking sensitive data at runtime when it's displayed. So the key benefit here is that it enables better compliance with data regulations like HIPAA or GDPR, by allowing users to mask fields from unauthorized users. And so what dynamic data masking is, well, you have a database. That database has data DDM enabled and activated. And so you have a company, and it has information of that company in that database. But between the client, where that information is served up, and the database, you have the internal memory buffers. And then internal memory buffers hold that same exact information as the database. So you have a situation where, again, that HR manager needs to be able to see that sensitive information. So they have a query, they run the query, and that query is resolved, and the information is returned from that internal memory buffer, all of it, unmasked. Then you have a non-DDM user. that doesn't have access to that information, that shouldn't have access to that information. Again, when that non-DDM admin tries to display that information, run a display statement, an export statement out of the ABL, that information is masked. So what dynamic data masking is not? Dynamic data masking is not a true security feature. It's not a method for encrypting data in the database or on the wire over the network. It's not a tool to replicate databases and obfuscate at the database level again, not encrypting. It's not a way to mask binary large objects or character large objects. It's not a quick fix for regulatory compliance. And the bottom line is that if a lot of these regulations, not only does the data need to be masked, but the data needs to also be encrypted either in a database, on the wire, and dynamic data masking does not do that. You need SSL, or something like TDE, one of our other products, in order to do that as well. So it cannot be done alone with dynamic data masking in these features. All right, so pretty abstract diagram here, but in essence, DDM administrator is created. That DDM administrator then creates data masking policies. We also call them DDM rules. Roles that DDM user or DDM admin also creates roles in the database, then assigns those masking policies to those roles. And as a last step, users are assigned to those roles. And so now an admin can, again, data masking policies are applied for admin, and other data masking policies or DDM rules are applied to non-authorized users or non-DDM users. And so the AVM provides 360 support for DDM in all the clients, ABL client, SQL client, .NET Open Client, Java Open Client, by adhering to these configurations or data masking policies provided or established at the database level. So another quick example of how it would work if, for example, an ABL developer runs a display statement on an employee table. The query will come back and show the results, but again, the fields that the ABL developer is not privy to, they will not be able to see that information. Same applies at the SQL client. A DBA can run a SQL command, select star or on a table. But if that DBA is not allowed to see that sensitive information, for example, if it's a social security number, password, date of birth, those fields will be masked in the query results. You may have seen that you can apply different masking, and yes, you can apply different masking. There's different masking types for dynamic data masking. There's a default, partial, literal, and unknown. By default, it replaces the whole entire field. So, for example, lift tours will be all X'd out. You can also replace fields partially. So if you wanted to just show the first or the last four of a social or last four of a credit card, you can go ahead and do that as well. And that's what that will look like. You can mask it using a literal mask. So if you want to mask it with the word authorized, you can go ahead and do that. And then you can mask the whole entire value with just a literal mask, the unknown value. There are other features with dynamic data masking. We've talked about the first one. It allows you to grant or deny access to sensitive information for different users. It tracks events, audit events like enabling, disabling, activating, deactivating that occurs in the DDM, in the database, as well as adding or modifying or deleting DDM rules. It also supports the ability to run a dump and load on DDM-enabled data. And then lastly, for any connected DB clients, It also notifies any DB connected clients that something happened, that a DDM schema has been changed. So it also has that functionality. There's a lot to dynamic data masking. If you want to learn more, this is just scratching the surface for this feature and specifically the other features as well. Again, I had to run through 8 of the features. So if you want to learn more about DDM, you can attend the PUG Challenge session. I think it's the next session in this same exact room. It's called Dynamic Data Masking, the 5 Ws. Sunil, my colleague, is going to run through this in 15 minutes. So a lot more information is going to be provided to you if you want to learn more about dynamic data masking. I mentioned ABL Dojo. ABL Dojo is a website that you can use. Many of you already use it to run and test your ABL code. So you can write ABL code. You could load existing code examples. So you can, I mentioned the list collections, sorted set collections, and hash map collections. There are code examples that you can literally just click a button and it loads an example. You can run it. You can test the code that way. You can share code. If you write code within the ABL Dojo, you can share user URL. Just like any other, like if you share a YouTube video, it just sends the URL. It's cool because it also supports multiple OpenEdge versions. So it supports not only 12.8.3, the latest, actually 12.8.4 is the latest, but it's still on 12.8.3. But it supports multiple versions, 12.2.16 and 12.8.3. And if you want to see a quick demo on ABL Dojo, you could click on that link. I'll provide the slides in the PUG, I believe, channel on YouTube. You'll be able to click on that slide. You could also search for it. You can see how ABL Dojo works. You may have seen this slide in the previous sessions. This is our marketing team put this together. It's a collection of a bunch of resources that you can go to. The first thing on the page when you scan this QR code is for you to fill out the survey. With the survey, it allows our team to know what you have in mind, what's working for you, what's not working for you. It allows you to take that OpenEdge survey and again provide us with that information of anything that you have in mind, any features that are missing, so you can go ahead and scan that QR code and fill out the survey. And with that, I mentioned if you have any questions, we have about 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, I'll answer them now. Yes?
Did you do any comparison between performance of PL and APL?
Do we do any
comparison
between ABL and
PL?
I don't know if we did any comparison between ABL and PL libraries. Not to my knowledge.
I try to compile my client side of my application and how compilation takes 4 minutes and 12 seconds. If I insert PL to the pro path about APL, I reduce the time for 56%.
So you're saying it's slower?
It was only 2 minutes.
Using which one?
Using PL instead of APL.
Okay, so you saw a performance improvement with APL?
APL I'm afraid that APL can significantly degrade the performance.
Yeah, we haven't saw that. We haven't saw that, but we can certainly look into that. And the team may have tested and just they may not have seen the same thing, but we'll definitely look into that. I'll take that back to the engineering team. Thank you. Yep.
I saw your examples for the aggregate function. They were with just a simple for each, but if you have like dynamic queries, can you still use the aggregate?
I believe so. I believe so. I haven't coded in a very, very long time. But I can take that back to the engineering team and ask them if you can run the aggregate operations on dynamic queries. Yeah. All right, any other questions? All right, with that said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your PUG challenge, and thank you.